Good evening and welcome to Garfield Heights City School District Special Board Meeting and Work Session. Today is Monday, May 10th, 2021. I call the meeting to order. Mr. Slooper, can I have roll call, please?
Sure, Ms. King,
Here.
Ms. Morrison,
Here.
Ms. Thomas,
Here.
Mrs. Daniels,
Present.
Mr. Juby is absent.
Correct. Can I have a motion for the adoption of tonight's agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Sluka, that was moved by Ms. King and second by Ms. Thomas. Can I have roll call, please?
Ms. King,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Daniels.
Yes. Can I have a motion to enter into executive session this evening for the purposes of discussing negotiations and personnel matters?
So moved.
Second. That was, Mr. Sluka, that was moved by Ms. Morrison and second by Ms. King. Can we have roll call, please?
Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. King,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Daniels.
Yes. Can you allow the minutes to reflect we're entering into executive session at 6:02 p.m., please? Thank you.
We're going to be meeting over in the conference room in the athletic director's
Okay.
office.
You're all set? Alrighty. Do we need a motion to adjourn executive
No, we
session?
just need to come out
Mr.
and just say we're
Sluka?
out of executive
Yep.
session at.
Mr. Sluka, can you, have the minutes reflect that we, left executive session at 6:10 PM? I'm at 7? Oh, 7. Sorry, I apologize.
Wish it was 6:10. That was fast. Yeah. Quick, yeah.
Reclaim time.
There we go.
We are now moving to the next, we're moving to our board discussion this evening for the purposes of our work session. The first item for discussion is the tentative agenda review. Did everyone get an opportunity to review the agenda? And did everyone get the agenda for May 17th? Okay. And do anyone have any questions relative to the review of this agenda? Any items in which you have questions? Ms. Thomas, do you have any questions this evening about the agenda?
No.
Ms. Morrison?
No.
Ms. King?
No.
Mr. Hanky and Mr. Sluka, do you have anything you would like to share with us regarding this tentative agenda that will be important?
Just to let the public know that the May update of the financial forecast will be submitted for approval at the regular meeting in May. We'll first review it with the finance committee before the meeting, and then I plan on doing a brief presentation at the meeting to summarize the forecast before the approval. That's the key item in May there.
Mrs. Daniels, I would like to point out one thing that will be added to the agenda is a resolution to establish the financial committee and the legislative committees. The way we've written the language is that we're able to expand those committees, but they do have initial members on them. So that will be placed on the final agenda so we can then have those committees operate appropriately.
Thank you, Mr. Sluka and Mr. Hanky. You guys have any questions regarding their comments? Okay, if there's no questions relative to their comments, our next item of discussion is our equity audit. Ms. King requested that we add this on the agenda today. The purpose of this item relative to the equity audit, we're just going to share some feedback that we received in our individual groups with our, what were they called? The teams, when we broke out during the PD session. And we can start with Ms. King sharing the feedback that she received.
Thank you, Madam President. There was just a couple of things that stood out to me as I met with the staff in the individual breakout rooms, as well as just looking at viewing some of the chat. There was a conversation among staff around school uniforms and whether or not that would decrease behavior issues, because everybody would be coming in looking the same and there would be no issues around, look what he's wearing, look what she's wearing, etc. Again, I think that kind of took place in the chat. There was talk about transportation to the high school, and that sometimes affects attendance, because students will say it was too snowy or too cold or it was raining, and that's why they didn't come to school at the high school. A teacher had mentioned that in the past there was a way that we used to send home flyers so that parents were in the loop as to what was happening in the community, but there has not been able to be, we haven't been able to share that information. And so I just want us to think about how we might be able to include some additional things to our website or through our social media outlets, so that anything that's not, I won't say anything, but things that are of importance and that our students and our families could be aware of, we could find some way to add that into some of the communications that we're already providing. And there was some talk about the lack of ability to create bonds because of the larger classroom sizes. And so that was one thing that we were also talking about in our group. Overall, we had a very rich discussion and a very positive discussion in the group that I was in.
Thank you, Ms. King.
Thank you.
Ms. Morrison, did you have any feedback you wanted to share?
Yeah, one of the things that I heard a lot of was communication seems to be a huge issue. A lot of the teachers were saying that they were learning things off of Facebook this year, and that they would just like better communication for the district. But I got the same feedback about the busing. You know, that's why some of the high school students don't get there. We had discussion about uniforms.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Ms. Thomas?
Yeah, I had a really good small group. We had some really good discussion that kind of began with one of our educators talking about the city of Garfield Heights and our history as a city and how that impacts our school district. It was a good conversation for some of our newer teachers who are in the district. The feedback that I got from my small group was that our educators are looking for actual action steps to do better with diversity and equity and inclusion in the district. They would like to see our admin be more cohesive in the supports that they offer. I got good feedback about PACS and that program and the good things that that has done in that building. More about communication and our leadership being cohesive again. And then I also got feedback about possibly thinking about a slow rollout and selecting one or two things to work on in our district at a time so that we could all focus on the same thing. And then more about relationships and communication.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. So, my group, we really focused in on what does equity mean, and so they shared a number of items that they felt like would provide our students with equitable access to their education, which included smaller classrooms, more access to interventions and resources. Um, they discussed a number of things. But what also came up in my group was that the same lack of resources that they feel that the students have access to, they felt that as educators they equally had a lack of resources in order to educate our students equitably. Just even as far as again, communication and direction. One good thing, one positive that I took away from the group of educators that I had an opportunity to sit and listen to is that they really, the equity audit, they were not surprised, but they were happy to actually have some data, and they really felt like they were ready to invest in making these changes that were necessary in our district, but they just wanted direction. They wanted to know how. They were very vulnerable in stating that they just did not understand how. They were happy about the district including them. So although there's a history, or they discussed the history of communication, but on the other hand, they were very grateful that this was a door opening where they were actually the first line that this was presented to. and had the opportunity to partake in these initial steps of the equity audit rolling out. So that showed the district's commitment to moving some things forward. So that was a very good positive, although they felt like it may have been some things in the past, but they felt really good about being considered at this stage of rolling this out. Their biggest thing was just having the resources. They want to, but they want to know how. I think one teacher shared that, you know, she had a realization, like she didn't realize our district has shifted the way it did over the last 10 years, and she had not changed, you know, and she wanted to know how she can change. One thing I did in my meeting, I just kind of let the staff know, because I could see that some people were just kind of feeling like personal responsibility. I'm like, well, it's not really a big district issue. It's not a staff issue. These are some systemic things and barriers that we're working on that is a national issue. So as we're getting this work done, it's not that we're blaming anybody. It's not that, you know, the district maybe intentionally took our students down this road. These were just some systemic things that we are now trying to, and there have been people working on it for years, but it's now coming to meeting us at the building and putting a demand on us to make some changes. So that was kind of where we were at in our groups. So I see we all pretty much had some of the feedback. One question I do have for you, Mr. Hankey, and that we got all this feedback and all this good stuff. Will this be presented to you guys, or how are you guys gonna disseminate or utilize the feedback that happened in these sessions?
Well, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to bring the gentleman, Chris Pelfrey and Mr. Cordy, to the Board of Education to talk about some of the data points that especially have risen up through the equity audit. I did just get word that it'll be in June.
Okay.
At the June regular meeting. Secondly, when teachers talk about resources, one of the things that started before the audit was a lot of training surrounding DE&I. We had training microaggressions and things, and we're going to continue on with that training. I think it's systemic throughout the district as we move forward. You know, I think, again, I kept hearing resources, and I think one of the things in mindset shift, and one of the things is that type of training by Ms. Hamilton, and supported by our building principals, is going to be very important to help teachers with the tools that they need to help them succeed with our students. And that's going to be important. The second thing is we're going to have to start looking, and it's from the top down. The board is, you know, committed to doing the equity training. So now we're going to be looking at a lot of things through the equity lens. So once we do that, I think it's going to help focus the teachers and the district as a whole as we move forward.
I agree. Thank you, Mr. Hankey.
You're welcome.
And it's really, you know, like we indicated, it's systemic.
Right.
Teachers and the buildings and the students can't do anything until the board, you know, look at some policies and redirect some things, and you make some recommendations, you know, and I think we are really putting the work in right now, you know, with our equity task force, even being vulnerable enough to actually have an equity audit, even more vulnerable to present it to the public in our June meeting. That says a lot about our commitment to this work. So thank you, Mr. Hankey, for your direction with this. Also, as Mr. Hankey indicated, we requested that same presentation be made to the Board of Education so that we can ask direct questions through our governance lens. He's going to present pretty much the same data points that he presented to the staff. But if you look at the grand scope. And if any of the board members would like any other specific data points to be explained, just please let me know so that Mr. Hankey can communicate that to him so he can present those items to the Board of Education. Okay. If there's any other questions regarding our equity audit, and Mr. Hankey, you and the cabinet staff put a lot of hard work into gathering that data and getting that stuff to them. And thank you so much for that. That gives us the data we need to actually advance equity and other matters in our district.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels.
You're welcome. The other item on our agenda this evening is Board of Education training update. I just want to share with you guys that there are various training opportunities that's offered through the OSBA and other avenues throughout Ohio for board members to continue education. If you have not registered our newer board members for the OSBA website, make sure you do so you can get those updates and stay in the loop. It's very important that we utilize the continuing education opportunities. It support us in being able to appropriately govern our school district. If you have any questions about any of the training, Mr. Sluka is very supportive in making sure that the Board of Education has access to the training, and he handles anything that you need to handle. So if you go in there and see some things, there's also webinars. So if there's some areas, there's a really good webinar about the 5-year forecast. We'll be voting on that on Monday. Mr. Sluka will be presenting it. If you don't really understand what that is, which you may not because you're newer to the board, that'll be a very good webinar for you to request from Mr. Sluka to sign you up for so that we know the appropriate questions to ask and make sure that we're making a proper decision that benefits the school district. So the procedure for that is if you find a training you would like, just send it over to myself or Mr. Sluka, and he'll coordinate that for you. But when you do attend trainings and they're paid for the district, I felt like, and I had a discussion with the team, it's very important that we bring that feedback to the board. It's no use in us sitting in trainings and we don't bring the feedback or the nuggets that can possibly benefit our district and Mr. Hankey. So Ms. Thomas and I attended the Board Leadership Institute last month, right? It
wasn't that long ago.
It was the end of last month. Yep, in April. And it was a 2-day conference. It was virtual. I was at one of those days.
Oh, yeah.
You made it to one of the days. And just going to share just some small nuggets. We're not going to represent the conference, but I did send to you guys all the slides. So it's everyone should have got an email today with a shared link to all the slides relative to the Board Leadership Institute. And so if you look over the slides and have some specific questions, any of us who attended should be able to support you. Ms. Thomas, do you want to share some of your feedback?
Well, you said you weren't going to give a full breakdown, so if you could go first so that I can just get an understanding of how much information you want me to share, because I got a decent amount.
I'm just going to share some nuggets. So I'll start off with one of the trainings was Milford Exempt School District, and they were talking about their mental health services. Al, are you ready for this?
I'm actually, I'll have to rewatch and I'll just read it off and then I'll.
You ready for this, Mr. Sluka? So Milford, they were really talking about the importance of resilient students and their mental health. And so what they decided, our school district does a very good job of coordinating services with various providers. I believe Mr. Pat made a presentation a while ago relative to that, and we connect, we make sure we support our students. But what they identified, they were doing the same thing, but what they identified was there was no continuity of services. Like those workers would leave, the kids would get different therapists and things of that sort. So they hired their own mental health coordinator, um, which was an admin position. Um, they provided these levels of service. They had prevention. Um, they actually had a contractor come in to do the prevention, and it was called Child Focus. But they were housed in the school building, but the school district did not pay for them. Um, they had therapeutic behavior support, therapy, and crisis intervention and risk assessment. Um, they had the service impact for this program it was no fee um, for the school-based services. So whatever funding they utilized, I think I did. They said they got wellness grant. They did Title I, Title IV, CARES Act money, and local grants. Um, but they like hired their own treatment team that facilitated the services, and they found that they got better outcomes. These were district employees, and they understood the culture of the schools, and they did not have to worry about these social service providers switching on the students. So the student was able to keep the same therapists, keep the same service providers, because they actually either were district employees or worked for the district. So, and then on a community and family engagement piece, Mr. Hankey, they actually also did community mental wellness, and they had a trauma and safety plan team in the district, which included fire, police, city, school, and community members that created this, and they met quarterly. And they did free consultations to the public. So even if they did not have a student in the district, and somebody, a parent or someone in the community, um, felt vulnerable in mental health, they would do an initial consultation and forward them to the outside service provider. So that was the piece on Milford exempt school districts, mental health services. And they mental health coordinator, which they had was an admin position. They paid no, they said their therapists that they hired, they paid $40,000 to $50,000 a year. They were 195 day contracts utilizing those funding sources that I indicated. So that was kind of neat. So I was like, wow, they had to creatively come up with funding for that. But um, Miss Thomas, did you want to share one?
Yeah, just a little tidbit on your mental health notes. Just as a worker, as a social service provider, one thing you could probably look into is the formula for how they fund family support specialists in CMSD with their Say Yes grant, because they have that role. They call it a family support specialist, and it's kind of similar to what I do, but they're school based. And I have found that the data reflects that having a mental health specialist in the school buildings is a lot more effective than having providers from different agencies coming in. So I attended the family engagement. Well, we both attended, but some notes from family engagement. Just for us to always keep in mind that family engagement includes the schools, the communities, and our families. That we should just have constant changes and effective conversations that lead into policy changes about family engagement. For us to remember that one program or one system won't fit every building that we have. And then one thing that they shared was an activity that their district did, which listed all of their students, and what they did was they had every educator in that building go and take the sticky note of that student who they knew. And the students who still had sticky notes up, they made intentional efforts to reach out to those families, to touch those families and their needs. I also attended, well, I also want to make note of our the Ed Choice session. Um, And some things that they shared about Ed Choice and the voucher was that, of course, we all know the voucher payments are increasing rapidly. The Ed Choice voucher promotes inequality. And all of these, they have statistics to show. So if you guys take a look at the slides, everything that they talked about was statistic based. They talked about students who are on Ed Choice vouchers are 2 times as likely to be white, and that Ed Choice harms non-white students and poor students. And that just had a lot to do with the funding and the way that that funding is set up. They also shared stories about their students who the voucher has failed. They talked about athletes and the recruitment of athletes from public schools. Then they also shared a story about the Cleveland Heights University Heights district and how Ed Choice is really impacting their school district community because they have multiple private schools within their district in very close proximity. So those are just some of the notes that had to do with the Ed Choice session.
Just to add on to that Ed Choice thing. So in Cleveland Heights in particular, they said that those private schools were recruiting people out of state to come move into Cleveland Heights to give their child an opportunity to attend this school for free.
And the other issue Cleveland Heights University Heights had was those students were already attending those private schools, and they were paying their own tuition until Ed Choice came. They never went to Cleveland Heights, and now Cleveland Heights is funding the school, and they never saw the student. Because of Ed Choice, they are now getting their tuition paid for, and they never stepped one foot into a Cleveland Heights University Heights school. And that's their issue of how the system is broken. And there, and Cleveland Heights University Heights, I'm not sure if they talked about it in your leadership institute, but there are, I want to say 30 districts that are in a mass lawsuit with the Ed Choice vouchers.
Yeah,
Participating in that lawsuit, saying it's unconstitutional.
I think they referenced it like predatory lending, like how they're
It
trying
really
to,
was. And that
very similar to that concept, but with these
and
vouchers.
it was mostly the Jewish community that was attending the private schools, and then all of a sudden, because I think their high school got put in Ed Choice, none of those students ever stepped foot, and then all of a sudden they're getting tuition, and I think it cost them upwards of $4 million of new Ed Choice monies that they never, I can't remember what the treasurer told me, but new Ed Choice monies that they weren't even getting funded for those students to begin with, and then they lost money.
They did mention a project. It's called Confronting Ed Choice Voucher Communication Project. The website for that is cecbproject.com. And they did encourage all districts and all board leaders to look into that and see if it's something that, we can join into and that would help us in our district with our Ed Choice issues.
Have we ever taken a stand or participated in any of those activities? Like, what is the impact? Vouchers, is it having an increasingly negative impact on our district?
We've been holding pretty steady at the charter schools. Ed Choice has increased significantly this past year, and I want to say it's because of a lot of parents wanted their kids in school. Those parents wanted their kids in school, and so we've been impacted more with the Ed Choice than we have with the community schools. It's going to be interesting to see how this year plays out when we come back, our students come back into the building, and how that works with parents in the community schools. And it's still with the legislators up, it's still a free for all with that choice.
Yeah.
Some of the backpack rules that Mr. Hankey was filling in on, and it's just, they're getting crazy. And the hard part is, and this is the issue that we're facing with the budget bill, is that Senator Huffman is a big proponent of Ed Choice in charter schools, and he's leading the conversation on expanding Ed Choice and cutting funding of the public schools.
He's the president of the Senate, so he has the ability to steer the agenda.
Influence a lot of that discussion. scary. It's a scary time right now for public education. There's some method in place. I'm sure they went through the House Bill 110, the Fair School Funding Act.
Yep.
That was a lot of work that was put into that. Around 2 years worth of all the educational leaders and two of the main House leaders and Representatives Patterson and Cup, who's now leading the House, and to go to the Senate and to have them just gut it is really I'm not sure how they're going to get away with it.
Yeah, I think I attended something, I think I sent you guys the slides in the presentation last week I had attended that specifically dealt with the school funding bill. So the next one that I attended was Every Child Succeeds with Breakfast. And they were talking about Charlton Exempt Village School and Cincinnati Public Schools creatively coming up with different concepts to increase participation in the school breakfast program. They indicated that data supports that breakfast is connected to students' success, starting them off with breakfast in the morning. And their really big thing that they were talking about, and that is not just really offering students breakfast, but actually food that they will eat. That we don't get comfortable. And they talked about where they initially had programs where they were just serving meals, but they were not offering students meals that they were actually eating. And although they were providing meals, students were not eating. And so they came up with very creative ideas to increase their breakfast programs in particular. Cincinnati Public Schools, and I think did something very similar to what our school district does. They did the carts and the breakfast in classroom. Both districts did breakfast in classroom, which they said completely free, made all breakfast free, whether they were a title school or not. Breakfast was free. And they also provided the breakfast in the classroom. So that seemed to be very successful. I think one district went from 19% participation to 63% participation in the 3-year period, which was a huge jump just by simply bringing the breakfast to the classroom. Both districts indicated that they did a lot of marketing. And one strategy, they said in the elementary school, they marketed to the parents. And then in the middle school and high school, they focused on marketing to the students. So really getting the student buy-in at that age group. They used Grants America, grants. The grants they utilized was American Dairy Mid-East, Action for Healthy Kids, and Lifetime Foundation. Carlton School in particular, they really kind of completely redid their whole menu and everything. They went away from the prepackaged food. They also included parents and teachers in a, what did they call it? Where they would taste panels. And actually in Carlton exempt schools, their cafeterias food, they're proud to say that the quality of food that comes out of their cafeteria, the superintendent and cabinet host all their meetings in the cafeteria with the food that's provided for the students. People regularly stop by their school for that opportunity. They also utilize like guest chefs that come in and work alongside the cafeteria staff to just kind of show people how hard their food service department works. And they also opened up a coffee shop. What did they call it? It was some kind of coffee shop. It was school approved coffee shop in the high schools and middle schools, and that improved student participation. And they said that also increased their a la carte because the kids still have free breakfast, but when they come in for a little approved coffee. And that increased their participation from 19% to 40%, just adding that in. So it was some really good creative things and just really talking about the quality of food. And if we wouldn't eat it, we shouldn't expect the students to eat it. And so just talking about improving that to ensure that we're just not providing meals for our students, but making sure that they have meals they will eat. And that was about it. They did an extensive legislative review. And I actually sent you guys the slides to kind of go over all the House bills and everything that they went over. Did you have anything that stood out for you, Ms. Thomas?
No.
Yeah, it's just the same budget items, report cards, graduation, state report card, graduation requirements, things of that sort. Just kind of what they went over in the legislative update. And OSBA does a regular legislative update. I've attended them outside of these regular meetings a couple times. So that's it. I hope that you guys found that information helpful and moving forward as a board. When we guys go to trainings, we'll be sure to present this information so that you guys might find something that's helpful. If there's not anything else, let me turn on the agenda. Is there any other questions or comments this evening for discussion? Ms. Thomas,
No, ma'am.
Ms. Morrison, Ms. King,
No,
Mr. Hanky, Mr. Sluka, Mr. Pepe?
No.
Okay, if there's no other discussion this evening, can I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
so moved.
Second. Mr. Sluka, that was moved by Ms. King and second by Ms. Thomas. Can I have roll call, please?
Ms. King,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Daniel.
Yes. Tonight's meeting is adjourned at 7:49 p.m. Thank you, and our next meeting is on Monday, May 17th at 6.